Thanks for listening to the Duval Rundown, brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Your path to recovery starts here. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Good morning and welcome to episode 23 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'll be joined by Mia O'Brien to break down the Jacksonville Jaguars' Week 8 matchup against the Green Bay Packers. Today we're specifically going to take a look at Green Bay's wide receiver room and kind of what makes it all work for Mike LaFleur and Jordan Love. But before we get to that, of course, we're going to start this show, as we do every show, with some Jaguars trivia. Tank Bigsby has 6.2 yards per carry this season. The only players with a better average are Baltimore's Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. So he would be on pace to shatter Jacksonville's single-season record for yards per carry. Who holds that record for the best single-season yards per carry mark in Jaguars history? Is it A, Maurice Jones-Drew, B, Fred Taylor, C, Travis Etienne, or D, Rashad Jennings? Mia, you got a guess for this one?
I would love for it to be Rashad Jennings and us to have a nice chuckle about. I'm pretty sure he played for the Packers too, right? All I know is I watched him on Wheel of Fortune a few months ago, and he was awesome in Wheel of Fortune. I'm going to go with Fred Taylor, though, as my answer.
It's MJD, actually, in 2006.
Wow.
And interesting enough, the next best season was Fred Taylor in 2007. But Rashad Jennings and Travis Etienne are both up there in the top 5 for like single seasons, but pretty much every running back or every other running back is like just switching off between Fred Taylor and Maurice Jones-Drew for the best seasons. But yeah, MJD does hold that record for Jacksonville. So we're talking a little bit less about Jacksonville today, Mia, and a little bit more about Green Bay, their opponent this week. And so I've been workshopping this take, I guess, which is that.
Ooh, we're starting off with a Gus hot take. Talk about a way to start a Thursday morning in the Duval Rundown.
It's more of a bit than a take, honestly, because my all-time favorite TV shows, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And so in every episode, they're getting themselves into jams and having to get out of jams. And so in this one episode, they get into a jam and they can't figure out how to get out of the jam. And they think that it's because they're like not in the right roles. And so they have like a role for each of them. And so Frank is, now where do I want to start with this? Mac is the brains of the operation. So he's going to put together the whole game plan and he's going to keep everyone on their toes. And he kind of unlocks everyone else as like the skeleton key. So that's Romeo Dobbs because.
Oh, wow. I thought that was going to be Jaden Reed.
No. I think Dobbs is the brains of the operation because like even if the brains isn't the most important part of it, it's like the first part that you think about or the part that kind of unlocks everything else. And that's what Dobbs is for Green Bay's offense, is that he's almost like kind of a better version of Zay Jones or Gabe Davis as like a glue guy who can run a bunch of different routes from a bunch of different formations. He can get up into all 3 levels, but especially intermediate. And it's not like Green Bay has a bunch of routes where it's like they're asking one guy just to run a clear out. But if you're going to have someone run a clear out, it's probably going to be Dobbs. And so he does a lot of the dirty work for that offense. And again, is really just a big glue guy for that offense in order to help them unlock all their other pieces, including Jaden Reed, who I would say is the looks, which is Dennis and Always Sunny. Reed is definitely the looks because he's kind of like the shiny and the flashy bit of the group or person in the group. And he's going to get a bunch of first read looks. He's going to get all of the pizzazz behind the line of scrimmage. One of the biggest definitions or characteristics of Green Bay's offense is misdirection, and they do that a lot with motion, specifically with Jaden Reed. And so, like, Dennis is like the flashy guy that can use his appearance to get what he wants. And so Matt LaFleur can use the appearance of Jaden Reed to get what he wants. And then, let's see, Frank is the muscle because he does a lot of heavy lifting financially. So I think Christian Watson is the muscle because he does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of explosiveness because Dobbs kind of lifts the floor of this offense by just being dependable and being versatile. But Watson really lifts the ceiling of the offense by being explosive and being their true deep threat and the guy that's really going to create explosives for you. And so he does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of elevating the ceiling of Green Bay's offense. And then to wrap up, the last one is what is it? I did brains, muscle. Oh, wild card, of course. It's Dontavian Wicks, who's Charlie in Always Sunny. And so Wicks is the wild card because he runs the lowest amount of routes and has the lowest amount of snaps among all of these guys. But he also gets targeted a ton anytime he is onto the field. And he's kind of like an analytics darling because he's really productive in the role that he has, which is part-time. And so hypothetically, if he ever has a full-time role, he could just break math, or football math at least. And then the last person in the bit is just D is the useless chick. And so that would be Bill Melton because he has 4 catches this year. But yeah, so basically the point of this is just to say that Green Bay doesn't have like an alpha number one guy. They don't have a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, a Brian Thomas, whatever you want to say. But they do have some really, really good role pieces that just fit together really well within their roles. And so I tried to bring something different because usually I'm a big stats guy. So that's a different little analogy for you. But you can go ahead and bring the stats now, Mia.
No, I more so. There's a lot to dissect there, both from a numbers but also a film and television analysis perspective. Gus, we'll save that for another time. I do want to know what you just said though. They don't have a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, or a Brian Thomas Jr., so they don't have an LSU wide receiver or a wide receiver one. I had to throw that out there. I think your choice of character analogy for both Dobbs and Watson are fascinating because you could make the argument, and certainly I was, in preparing for today's show, I was reading on Matt Harmon from Yahoo Sports when he went through the 2023 Packers offense. You could make the argument when they were 15th in dropback success rate weeks 1 through 7 last season. Certainly that was when Jordan Love was getting his sea legs under him in his first year as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. But also that's when the offense ran through Watson. They were second from week 14 on and through the playoffs in dropback success rate. And that, I think, was when Matt LaFleur started curtailing this offense, perhaps to be more about Dobbs, but certainly to be more about Jayden Reed. I think the knock on Jayden Reed coming into this season is he just a slot receiver who it needs to be a design play for him? Otherwise, can he actually win off the line of scrimmage? He actually had a 76.9% success rate against press coverage last year, 72.2% success rate against man. Obviously, it was a little bit higher for zone. And so I think he's proven that not only is he wide receiver one in this offense, but also that he isn't just a one-trick pony. And so that's why I think the offense has run through him for the better part of the last calendar year. Certainly Watson being a second-round pick and Dobbs also having an extra year of experience compared to Reed. I think that's where you could make the argument that those are the two bigger high-profile names. But if only in the stats and info department, I think Reed is undoubtedly who this offense is running through. To your point, Dobbs and Watson stretch the defense to a level that Reed necessarily can't. Although I go back to that season opener against the Eagles, and I was shocked to see him running free downfield on a go route. And I was like, man, okay, he is not just this Christian Kirk, if you may, of the Green Bay Packers offense. So I think it's interesting that you believe this offense is still running through those two wide receivers that can stretch the field more than the guy who has led them in receptions and yards each of the past 2 years.
I guess it's all 4 of them, really, even including Dontavian Wicks as part of the role. Because that was really my point, is that, again, they don't have a true number one, where I agree with you, where the number one receiver is Jayden Reed, and he's definitely the guy that Jacksonville has to worry about most. But, Reed isn't able to be as successful as he is without the guys around him, which is pretty obvious for the system that Mike LaFleur has set up, or Matt LaFleur.
It's all right. Robert Saleh is working for the Packers now and on the offensive side of the ball. So he once upon a time employed Mike LaFleur. Apparently he's friends with Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator. So they're all in that same tree, a tree that I think so many Jaguar fans want a little piece or a little branch of at some point or another. So all part of the same tree.
Yeah, I actually do think Jayden Reed has like a pretty similar role to Christian Kirk, because it's not like either of them are just slot guys, but they're both vertical slot guys. And so like this past weekend against the Patriots, you saw Christian Kirk come down with a big catch on like an over route from a slot formation, basically. And so, yeah, I think that Reed is definitely like the first guy that you got to think about. And I think he also presents possibly the biggest mismatch, or at least the most interesting matchup for Jacksonville going against Jardy and Jones, because even if Tyson Campbell has been banged up even if Ronald Darby is having up in year season, I still have faith in them as just veteran man-to-man cornerbacks to kind of get the job done, especially against good but unspectacular players on the outside for Green Bay. But then Jaden Reed is really their most explosive, or not necessarily most explosive, because again, that goes to Christian Watson, who can take the top off of defense. But their biggest playmaker for sure is Jaden Reed, who, like Christian Watson, can do a lot of damage vertically from the slot. It's not like he's just due a bunch of jet sweeps and screen passes and stuff like that, though he does do that too. And so I think Jarian Jones is going to need to have a really big game. And he did have a nice performance last week against the Patriots. He was targeted a decent amount, but only allowed like 5 receptions for 34 yards, I want to say, off the top of my head. And so he didn't let up a lot of damage, but there's definitely a potential to let up a lot of damage this week against Jaden Reed, and especially with all the misdirection the Packers do too.
And the other thing that Jarian Jones has really impressed through his 7 weeks of his NFL career has been limiting separation on his in terms of coverage. He's at top 5, I think, among all slot corners right now. He actually shared the graphic on his Instagram story. That's the only reason I saw it, that he is, by Pro Football Focus's measurement, he is top 5 right now in limiting separation. That's going to be huge going up against Reed, who is 8th in the NFL right now in yards after catch. You're going to need as tight of coverage as you possibly can, solely because this is a guy who, that's the next level he's taken with his game. Dontavian Wicks led the Packers last year in yards after catch per route, but this year it's actually Reed, who has 243 of his 452 yards that have come after the catch. And so he does have that next gear, akin, like you said, to Christian Kirk, who maybe doesn't get the praise that he should for that extra level of speed. He's not a burner, but he does have that athleticism that I think people sleep on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in like not the first 2 seconds of each offensive play, but the second 2 offensive seconds, I guess, because that's when Jacksonville is really going to have to limit Green Bay's just explosiveness if they are able to, after Jordan Love is holding onto the ball for 2 seconds, if they're able to either get a sack or force him to throw and get a tackle quickly, then that's going to be huge, as opposed to letting Jordan Love kind of go backyard football mode like he likes to do and do fadeaway trick shots to players who are wide open because they had 5 seconds to get open. And so it'll be interesting to see, obviously, the pass rush and the pass coverage work together. But yeah, the Jags are going to need both units to play well.
So let's pick and choose where we want to go from here, Gus, because we could talk a little bit about Jordan Love, who, look, I understand that the talent is tantalizing. If anything, and again, we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the season, but you can make the argument that Jordan Love is at a similar point in his national reception, let's call it, how the rest of the national media views him, that Trevor Lawrence was at a year ago, where everyone is so infatuated with this quarterback as a top 10 quarterback, yet he's tied for the league lead with 8 interceptions with Patrick Mahomes and Gardner Minshew in 2 less games than those other 2 quarterbacks. Or do we want to go the route of also exploring the Packers tight ends? Because that is the part of this offense that has me most concerned. If you're Ryan Nielsen, Rick Nielsen, whatever we're calling him these days, and the Jaguars defense.
Yeah, because Tucker Kraft has really come on. I know that the Packers drafted both Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave at tight end two drafts ago, but Luke Musgrave has been pretty injured this year. In his absence, Tucker Kraft has really stepped up. He was a former draft crush of mine, actually. He went to like North Dakota State University.
North Dakota State, Jackrabbits, baby.
I thought he's basically the Brenton Strange role, where he's like a really good blocker, and then you can get more from him during and after the catch, then great. And Tucker has been amazing after the catch and as a receiver, but he's also a really good run blocker. And so he's another guy that kind of unlocks a lot of different things for Green Bay's offense. He's been great this year. And so I think that's another really interesting matchup, because I would assume that in man coverage, he's mostly going to see a lot of Foye Oluokun, assuming he does return from his foot injury on Sunday. And Foye was playing lights out in coverage before he got injured this year. I think he's always been known as more of a run stopper, and that is fair because I would say that's his strength. And it's not that he was bad in coverage before, especially compared to other linebackers, but this year he has really stepped up his game, and especially in man coverage under Ryan Nielsen's zone or man heavy scheme. And so I think that'll be a big return, where obviously the return of Tyson Campbell is a big deal, they blew out their opponent when he came back last week, even if their opponent was pretty bad. But we know that Tyson's a really big deal, but I think that even if we also know that Foye is a big deal in general because he's one of the best defenders on the team and one of the best leaders on the team, specifically for his responsibilities in coverage this week against the Packers, his return would be huge.
Yeah, I think that is perhaps the reason. And again, I don't want to speak out of turn for Ryan Nielsen here, but for everyone who questioned why are you moving Foye to weak side linebacker, why is he not the Mike, but he still has the green dot? Perhaps it was that opportunity to have your linebacker, or at least of the returning linebackers who had playing experience at the start of this season, the linebacker who was the best in coverage, having him in that position to go up against the team's tight end. Comparatively to, of course, someone who has been much maligned over the last week plus in particular, probably the last 7 weeks, and that being one Devin Lloyd. You could throw Chad Muma in that category as well. With Ventrell Miller's emergence, certainly he is that run thumper while also being athletic enough that he can go sideline to sideline and give you something in coverage. But certainly to your point of Foye, there was an idea of, well, he's a run stopper. He's that guy who's going to be so disciplined in his gaps at the second level, keeping everybody in the right position. Ventrell Miller has proven, while Foye Oluokun has been on the reserve injured list, he can take on that role, and that frees Foye up not only to drop back in coverage, but also to become a free runner and to blitz, which is something we saw in a handful of games last year, most notably the New Orleans Saints matchup on Thursday Night Football, in which he also had a pick six. And so I think it's, to your point, yes, I think if Foye is back, he has to be on Tucker Kraft. What I'm curious is does Matt LaFleur go to a heavier personnel set because he recognizes that while Ventrell Miller is okay in coverage, if you're in a base defense, if you're in a 4-3 and one of those other two linebackers is on the field, can you create a mismatch then with Musgrave, who has just 5 catches on 7 targets so far this year? And look, I don't want to be that guy, but we've seen it before, whether it was David Njoku last year in Cleveland, whether it was, Dalton Kincaid barely had any targets, let alone catches, going into the week 3 meeting in Buffalo in Orchard Park earlier this year. It just has been, unfortunately, the Jaguars' defense's Achilles heel, regardless of who the coordinator is, a tight end who hasn't really emerged, taking that step against this Jaguars linebacking core. And again, that goes back pre-Ryan Nielsen, pre-Mike Caldwell. And so knowing that the Packers have 2 capable tight ends, that is where I certainly have a little bit of pause of how this meeting is going to go on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think that I think Ventrell has actually been like pretty okay in coverage this year, better than I would have expected him coming off of the Achilles injury. And I always thought that he was actually, even though he's definitely more of a downhill thumper middle linebacker, I always thought at Florida he was actually had a pretty solid feel for like matching coverages. Excuse me, for matching coverages and pass defense. But yeah, you said it. The Jaguars have had struggles going back to last season covering tight ends. And I think a big part of that is that it's not like, oh, they don't have the linebackers to cover tight ends one-on-one. Like, it's not like Travis Kelce and a bunch of tight ends around the league are like taking turns just destroying them in man or zone or whatever. I think the main thing is play action. And usually when you're running play action, Jacksonville, like their play action attack is pretty interesting this year because it's so heavily involving Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk, who are 2 wide receivers in downfield aspects. But a lot of times in play action, because you're bringing extra bodies onto the field, you're trying to free up at least one of your tight ends. And Matt LaFleur, in that Shanahan-McVay type offense, does a really good job of freeing up tight ends, specifically on play action. And so I think that's something that Jacksonville is going to have to worry about this year because it's like, I think it's less of a, it's not that they're liable against tight ends, it's just that they're liable against play action. And so, again, Matt LaFleur runs a ton of misdirection with like all of the jet motion and fake counters and like we're just really good play sequencing. And so Jaguars are just going to have to stay on their keys, maintain kind of like gap discipline or whatever, contain the edge. Just like everyone needs to really do their job against this offense in order to win.
Yeah, let's run through some past tendencies of Matt LaFleur's offense so far this year when Jordan Love is the quarterback, because This surprised me, to say the least. They are running play action 22.1% of their offensive snaps. I thought that would be a high mark. That's actually 22nd in the National Football League. I expected a much higher number. Now, with 13.8% of their offensive plays being run pass option, that's 8th in the National Football League. That is where the addition of Josh Jacobs to this offense, I think he not only fulfills the role that Aaron Jones had for the better part of the last decade in Green Bay, but he adds an extra layer to that just by the sheer athleticism as well as that bowling ball mentality, whereas Jones is a little bit more undersized. I also think it's interesting that the Packers run screen plays 8.7% of the time, which is 6th in the National Football League. And again, I think a lot of that stems from the skill set of Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, the tight end play. You can create those mismatches. You can add extra bodies, create misdirection. But I was a little surprised to see that. And maybe I shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, Matt LaFleur is from the McVay-Shanahan tree. And so that's certainly a hallmark of their offense. But yeah, I was expecting way more play action because I was anticipating, number one, you have Josh Jacobs, and number two, Matt LaFleur trying to make things easier for Jordan Love, but perhaps akin to Trevor Lawrence last year and this year, where Doug Peterson has said he knows the offense, he can take the reins of it. I don't have to simplify things and give him this cushion. He needs to make decisions out of whether that's under center or the shotgun, and he needs to be able to make plays at the line and not necessarily have that luxury of having the run game supporting him.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see Love out of structure in this game, because when he's in structure, I mean, just because of his talent, the talent of the players around him, and then the scheme that he's playing in, he could pretty much just tie like bandana around his eyes and just operate the offense blind, just the way that it's structured. And so the real question is, again, when it's unstructured, when like one thing will kind of breaks apart, or when he sees an opportunity and wants to take a shot. He's been getting a lot of Brett Favre comparisons recently, partly because, as you mentioned earlier, he does lead the league in interceptions. And I think like the Favre interceptions, Matt LaFleur said in a press conference, were a bit strong. We got to slow down on those a little bit. But I think that the comparisons are kind of a good thing, because the reason that he's getting these Favre comparisons is that Love is being really aggressive in testing tight windows. And more than anything else, I think he's just giving his guys a chance. It's been cool to see Trevor Lawrence do that more and more over the past couple of weeks, as he's been more comfortable with, like, especially newcomers like Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, but especially Brian Thomas Jr., just because he's been so good. But Jordan Love has that elite quarterback trait where he gives his receivers chances to make a play at the right times. And so I almost feel like this is similar to a matchup when the Jags go up against Josh Allen and the Bills, where Josh Allen is amazing, and like at any given point he could roll out and flick a ball 80 yards for a touchdown. But at the same time, you almost want him to do that, because if you get him out there, then you're gonna that's more liable for a bad play and a turnover or something like that. Because if going back to Jordan Love, if this Green Bay offense is in structure and in rhythm, then they're just like a chainsaw. And I don't think the Jaguars, or most defenses, but especially not the Jaguars, are equipped to defeat that. But if Jordan Love goes into his little backyard football mode, trick shot mode, which again can be devastating and is usually really sick, but that type of style is also just a little bit more prone to turnovers and mistakes. And so I think that's where the Jacksonville is going to have to capitalize and create one or two turnovers on Sunday.
And that's the good news if you're the Jaguars defense. This Packers offense has been known and been prone to mistakes, even despite the fact that Love in 5 games has thrown for 15 touchdowns to those 8 interceptions. Jaden Reed has 6 drops. That is tied for 3rd in the National Football League. Tucker Kraft has 2 fumbles. We already mentioned Love with his 8 interceptions. Dontavian Wicks, 14 receptions this season on 38 targets. He has 4 drops, which is tied for 6th in the National Football League. And so ball security has been an issue across the board for this team. And Jordan Love was asked about it yesterday in the locker room up in Green Bay. And he sounded very defiant when he was asked about, what this team has to do. And he was almost like, offended, but taking it personally that they know they have not taken care of the football. And that is where, if you're the Jaguars defense, this is the game where you got to come out and you have to punch the ball. That has to be the focus, because yes, this is a fast group of skill players, who can get out in space and make plays. But if you do keep that tight press coverage that Ryan Nielsen wants to run, and you do not give your guy much separation, you have to make sure that you are, number one, rallying to the football, which is something that Jarian Jones, among others, told me in the Jaguars locker room yesterday. They know they have to do. And you have to constantly be looking for an opportunity to make a play on the football from a defensive perspective, because the ball security is a question mark right now for the Green Bay Packers.
Who do you see having an impact for Jacksonville's defense, other than we've talked about Jarian Jones having a big matchup against Jaden Reed in the slot, and then Foye Oluokun, who's supposed to return? I think Darnell Savage certainly deserves a shout out since he's going against his former team. It was really funny. I actually got a clip I can pull up right now. Mark Long asked him if he was going to talk to any of his Green Bay teammates or former teammates before the game. This is what he said.
For after the game?
On some friendly stuff? Nah. I mean, I'm here to play a football game. It's not a reunion, you know. We're here to go 1-0 this week. So that's how we treating it. That's how I'm treating it.
Right answer.
I just personally hope for Darnell that he's able to have a good game, or at least make a couple plays against his former team, because I don't think he hates them or anything like that, but I feel like he feels a certain type of way about the team that drafted him in the first round a few years ago. But then the only other name I was going to bring up is Josh Hines-Allen, just because I've been trying to make the case that, yes, Trayvon Walker has had a better season so far on paper, but I really think the two of them are both doing very well. And so I think this is a game that Josh Hines-Allen kind of clicks and is like, don't forget about me. I know that Trey is doing great, and he loves Trey as much as anyone else, but don't forget about Josh Hines-Allen. So I could see Josh Hines-Allen's strip sack being one of those potential turnovers that you were just talking about.
I also think that when it comes to those two pass rushers, part of why they both haven't quite eclipsed the mark where they were at a year ago is not only because the team has been playing from behind most of the last 7 weeks, but also because of the double team rate. And look, I don't want to lament it even more, but for a second straight off season, for a second straight first 7 weeks of the season, what have fans clamored for? Having a bona fide third pass rusher on the edge. Because when you just have those two guys, and everyone knows that they are the two pass rushers who are going to come off the edge for you, and even now they're not playing quite nearly as many snaps as they did a year ago. You see Trayvon Walker on the field, you see Josh Hines-Allen on the field, okay, double team. Okay, in the case of the Green Bay Packers, who have such depth at tight end, we bring some tight end help, no problem. And if they leak out and then they're available in the passing game, great. And so that's where it's unfair for those two guys. And look, again, we don't know what the story of the season remains to be told, but I do think that when all is said and done, there will be some disappointment in both of those two players' final statistical numbers. And again, to your point, it doesn't tell the full story, because the reality is that when they are literally on the scouting report, number one and number two things that need to be stopped, then it's easy. You bring a double team. The one point I do want to make, and again, we're early in the week. It's a Thursday morning as we're recording this, Gus. But I would argue the top two offensive linemen for the Green Bay Packers, and Elgin Jenkins and Josh Myers, both did not practice on Wednesday. Those will be situations worth monitoring. I believe Jenkins, it is a glute injury, and Myers, it's a wrist injury. I believe both those guys should be good to go on Sunday, but even if they're slightly banged up, that says to me that if this is an offensive line that, look, is among one of the better offensive lines in the National Football League, but if you can try to create mismatches, if you can, oh my goodness, what a novel idea. If you can line Josh Hines-Allen or Trayvon Walker up on a guard and bring them into the interior where you have not been able to create an interior push, I don't know. Maybe you try that out. It's maybe a little too exotic, but at 2-5, it's the time to, it's more than been the time to try that out.
Totally. I'll be interested to see exactly how exotic Ryan Nielsen gets in his blitz looks, because I feel like he was most exotic last week against the Patriots, but they were also going against a quarterback in Drake May making his second career NFL start. And so going against Jordan Love, even though Love is still only 25 or 26 years old or something, so he's still a fairly young player without more than 2 full seasons of game experience under his belt. but still, he's got a lot more experience, and that's one of the ways that I think Jordan Love has actually grown the most is just facing the blitz and having answers against the blitz. So it would definitely be interesting to see what Nielsen is able to cook up. So, Mia, you got any final takes, score predictions, thoughts?
Yeah, well, it hasn't worked out too well when I've given score predictions. I think last week we predicted a tie. So yeah, let's predict a tie.
You predicted scoregami, and I honestly
did.
I kept waiting for it during the game to like get a notification that it was scoregami. I don't know if it was or not, but
it came close to it. So I mean, hey, we'll take that. No, one other thing I wanted to leave you with, Gus, in terms of coverages that this Green Bay Packers offense has faced so far this year. I thought this was rather interesting. They have faced cover 3 defenses 40.9% of the time, easily the most used defensive scheme against this 6-headed monster, if you may, on the offensive side of the ball for the Packers. They have faced cover 1 15.1% of the time, which happens to be the defensive coverage the Jaguars have run the most so far this season. And cover 3 is the coverage that they have run the least so far this season. And yes, I did even go back, folks, and I specifically looked last week against the Patriots with Darnell Savage starting at safety opposite Andre Sisco, Jarian Jones in the nickel slot, and then Antonio Johnson coming in and dime coverage to be that 6th defensive back. And even then, the Jaguars ran cover 1 39% of the time, and they ran cover 3 just 17% of the time. And so I think part of it is by virtue of the teams the Packers have faced so far and by virtue of the teams the Jaguars have faced so far. But ultimately, this game for me is going to come down to, do you have the horses to stop this many guys who could potentially score touchdowns for the Green Bay Packers in the receiving game?
Yeah, it's definitely what it feels like it's come down to for a couple of different games so far this season for Jacksonville and its defense. So they'll definitely be facing perhaps their biggest test of the season so far this Sunday against Green Bay's offense, Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, and all the pass catchers. So, Mia, thank you for joining. We will see you here on Sunday after the game to break down which of the four horsemen, I guess, had the best game. Was it Brains?
I was going to say, do we want to make our prediction of who we think is going to be the guy for the Packers on Sunday? Because I'm going to plead the fifth and not say any of those 4 wide receivers. I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave and some combination of tight ends.
Okay. I'm going to go with Jaden Reed, just because I do like Jarian Jones a lot, and I do think he could have a good game, but I just think this is a really tough matchup for the rookie. And Jaden Reed or Jordan Love to Jaden Reed is going to happen one way or another. So yeah, I like Reed to have a good game in this one. But
and never forget too that Dontavian Wicks is a Green Bay Packer thanks to the Jacksonville Jaguars, because that was the pick that was sent to Atlanta once upon a time, the first draft pick in the Calvin Ridley trade that the Falcons then dealt to the Green Bay Packers on draft day, and that translated into Dontavian Wicks.
I was afraid you were going to say it was like Alan Lazard, where Wicks was just on Jacksonville's practice squad and they let him go.
God, no, heck no. No, Dontavian Wicks has not hasn't jumped, bulldozed me on a sideline and given me a concussion. That distinction belongs to only one former Jaguars practice squad turned Green Bay Packer turned New York Jet, and that is Alan Lazard.
There you go. All right. Yeah, I think we got all our predictions out of the way. Thank you. Take care. I'll talk to you Sunday.
All right. Adios, guys.
Peace. All right. Time for a quick ad break.
Thanks for listening to the Duval Rundown, brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Your path to recovery starts here.
It's time for the top 5 quotes. We're going to start with Nate Tice, who appeared on the Bold Take podcast with Dilla and Cap. If you don't know, then I don't even know how to describe it. But yeah, this is Nate Tice talking about law.
Is a lot was more there, so I just think the accuracy, I think his decision making is very good still, even on turnovers or some of the bad plays. I would say his worst plays again was he trying to create too much, but now the last couple of weeks I think he reset himself. Like, don't have to be a hero every play, don't have to do this. Guys catching the ball in the end zone helps. I do think that he is one of the best, really, I mean this, one of the best throwers of the football in the red zone, because he's so accurate, gets the ball out early. That line drive throws work really well in the red zone. He gives, the London game, the second London game against the Patriots, he had 5 throws that were brilliant.
So the Bold Take is definitely the best Jaguars fan podcast out there, but honestly, it's just one of the best Jags podcasts out there. So I would recommend, excuse me, going to check that out, especially the episode with Nate Tice, just breaking down a lot of Jacksonville's offense, including Trevor Lawrence. Next quote comes from Doug Peterson. All the rest of the videos come from Jaguars YouTube. This is Doug talking about whether Ventrell Miller and Foye Oluokun could be the primary linebackers going forward, as opposed to Foye and Devin Lloyd.
On the field together.
Yes.
Like definitively, like primarily.
Like moving forward?
Yes, moving forward. Could they be the primary linebackers moving forward?
I would say, short answer is yes. I think too. You know, you want your best 11 on the field, whatever that looks like, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be the best football player, but the one that does things right the most. But I do still think that there's enough of a rotational piece with those guys. I think that's one of the positions that's gotten better. You know, the last couple of weeks it has been the linebacker. I think Devin in the middle's gotten better. Ventrell, we know he's improved, and now with the addition of Foye coming back, if he's ready to go, I think you got your combinations back that you want.
What was it that Doug said? You don't necessarily play the best football player, but the one who does the most right. That seems like pretty direct talk about Devin Lloyd and Ventrell Miller. And so, yeah, I think it might be fair to expect Ventrell and Foye to be the starters on Sunday. But as Doug also mentioned, they do plenty of rotations with their linebacker unit. So it's not like Devin Lloyd is automatically going to see 0 snaps or anything close to it. But here's Foye Oluokun talking about the same subject.
Electric, you know, getting to the ball. They call him missile and all that stuff. You know, it's just definitely contagious, the energy that he brings. You know, still a young guy. Just kind of teaches him the nuances of the game. That's all he really needs now, just understanding, you know, where they're attacking him and stuff. But bright spot for sure, and just keep building on his game. He's going to be a lights-out player. So I'm going to enjoy, you know, continuing to teach him and play alongside of him. Obviously, we have a talented linebacker room. We got Devin. He's playing well, too. So really, watching them is going to make me step my own game up, to be honest with you. I got a responsibility on the field to be able to be a player at my best at all times. So I think, you know, high water raises all boats, I think. So I definitely enjoy watching them two ball out and enjoy, you know, balling out with them.
Cool to hear that Foye said that they call Ventrell missile. I don't know if that's just a Jags locker room thing or if it started back at Florida or in high school or something with Ventrell, but that was pretty cool. Number 2 quote comes from Tank Bigsby talking about getting a rhythm as a runner and in a running game with the offensive line. I just thought it was interesting because so often we're mostly thinking about quarterbacks and even pass catchers too as like needing to get into a rhythm and get into a flow and find their groove and yada yada. But I mean, I guess at least personally, I don't think about it as much in terms of the running game. So it was interesting to hear Tank talk about it here.
The game out, you know, as a runner, you feel the game out, the better the game gonna be. And it's just like you get one run and you don't get another one until 10 plays after. It's kind of like the first run of the game. So when you come back to back, it's like, okay, I can see this hole, I can see this hole, I can make this guy miss. We run the same run one time, and then we come back to it, and it don't work, but you missed it, then you hit it for longer this time. So it be things like that. Just getting a rhythm. It's very important as a running back in the O-line. I feel like running ball get O-line going.
The number 1 quote is also from Tank Bigsby saying pretty much the same thing, but just in different words. This time it's on the sidelines to his running back coach as opposed to in the locker room to media after the game. So here is Tank via Jacksonville's Mic'd Up with Tank from Week 7 against the Patriots.
It is Bigsby again, and he gets into the end zone.
Let's go! Let's get it, boy! Yeah, Pete! That's what we do! They gonna know it, baby! Auburn on Auburn, huh? Come on, baby. Auburn on Auburn. Run through it. Face, T! Hey, 31 went to Auburn. I'm warming up, coach. Listen, I'm warming up. I'm warming up, man. Listen, you ain't gonna eat that cold out the refrigerator while warming up, ain't it? Hey, this warm up. We're gonna be good.
So there you go. Tank Bigsby obviously warmed up in that game. He had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. The only other players with 2 games of 100-plus rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, Tank also did it in Jacksonville's Week 5 win over the Colts. The only 2 running backs to do that this year, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. I've got a bonus clip for y'all. It's not really a quote. It's more of just a clip. This one is from Jaguars locker room, sounds of the game. I posted a clip on Twitter yesterday at Gus_Logue of Brian Thomas Jr. film against the Patriots. And you can see the first clip is the catch that I was talking about with Kirk Mia. Jesus Christ. The first play in that clip was Christian Kirk catching the ball that I was talking about with Mia earlier. And Brian Thomas Jr. is running a deep post to basically take the top off of the defense. And then basically the next drive, the Jaguars hit the deep shot to Brian Thomas Jr. over the deep middle for 58 yards. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if that was always in the game plan to take that deep shot, or if they talked about it on the sidelines after that Kirk catch and said, hey, like, this actually might be open. And lo and behold.
It's handed up for me. He wanted it late.
I know. The post, right? I didn't know it. Those safeties, remember those safeties played low.
Yeah, he was playing full court outside. Yeah. Hit him like with the corner. Trevor under center this time. Receivers either side, slots to either side. Bigsby the running back. 5-man front for the Patriots here. Play fake. Trevor drops the throw. Looking. Fires deep downfield. Wants Brian Thomas Jr. Caught! Somehow caught. He's tackled to the ground at the 20-yard line of the Patriots. Christian Gonzalez had great coverage, but it's a 58-yard gain to the 20-yard line.
If you're going to leave Brian Thomas Jr. in single coverage, you're making a mistake.
From a 1-foot line, they hand it to Tank toward the goal line. Touchdown, a 1-yard touchdown run by Tank Bigsby.
Let's go. Let's get it, boy.
And the Jags have taken the lead.
Yeah, T. That's what we do.
So obviously the play was amazing. It was a 50-yard catch, the second longest of Brian Thomas's career. I mean, he already has the 85-yarder against the Colts. But as cool as the play was, the setup was way cooler because, again, it's probably easier for watchers of the stream as opposed to podcast listeners to see this clip that I'm playing. But the Jags talked about it on the sidelines, going back to that post that they were eventually able to get against Christian Gonzalez. And I think even cooler is not just the players and the coaches obviously talking about it amongst themselves before the facts, but then after the fact, I'll play it again here on the stream, is Doug Peterson coming over and telling Gabe Davis, yeah, good job, good luck. Telling Brian Thomas, yeah, good luck, good job, come down with it. And so, I don't know. Just, let me play it again.
Yard touchdown run by Tank Bigsby.
Let's go. Let's get it, boy.
And the Jags have taken the lead.
Yeah, T. That's what we do.
I don't know. That just gave me goosebumps or something. Yeah, they've got that look in their eyes. That's all I'm going to say. I've talked about it on Tuesday, but I don't know. I think this is a pretty good upset spot for Jacksonville against the Packers, just because obviously the Packers are a much, much better team. They're actually my Super Bowl pick for this season. But yeah, they had a big emotional home win against the Texans last week. They're going to be looking forward to next week's matchup against the division rival Lions. I know that Jacksonville does have the rest disadvantage coming over, or I guess more of a travel disadvantage. These are coming over from London. At the same time, most of their players and coaches are at least used to that. So that'll help. And yeah, I don't know. Doug, just watching that sounds of the game. Jags, they've got their juice back. I know that they just beat maybe the worst team in the league in the Patriots, but I think that was kind of a must win, certainly for Doug Peterson, but also for the rest of the team. But I think they kind of got their swagger back. So I'm excited for this week's game against the Packers. Let's get to some chat therapy. Demetrius Harvey tuned in earlier. Salute Demetrius, one of the best. I mean, I don't want to say like top 3 or top 5 to exclude anyone, but Demetrius is hands down one of the best beat reporters for Jacksonville. So definitely worth a follow if you're not following Demetrius on Twitter /X already. But Demetrius, appreciate you tuning in. Duval T87 said, Green Bay O-line is a weak link in my opinion, needs to pressure Love. Yeah, I thought Nia made a good point earlier talking about how Green Bay's arguably 2 best offensive linemen haven't practiced or at least not 100% healthy right now. And so that's definitely going to be interesting to see. On one hand, like how much Ryan Nielsen kind of dials up the blitz and is able to get to exotic blitz looks and kind of do like by exotic, I guess I mean not just having 6 people rush the quarterback and that's it, but having 4 people come on one side of the line and then like having someone drop off from the other side of the line, or having what's called a pressure simulated blitz, which is where someone kind of blitzes a second or 2 late to let the offensive line match up against other players, and then you send a kind of a late pressure. And so there's a bunch of cool different blitz packages that Nielsen is able to get to. So I'm excited to see what he unleashes and is unafraid of unleashing against Jordan Love. But then also, obviously it comes down to the players executing against Green Bay's offensive line and getting Jordan Love down on the field. Jags on Top said, Duval. Oh, go follow Jags on Tap, actually. I one of the like owners or runners of the channel or whatever is Sebastian. Shout out Seb, my guy. Jags on Tap. They do some cool stuff like going around the stadium and getting fan interviews before and after games and stuff. So check them out. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Looks like not a lot of therapy needed right now after the Jaguars are coming off a win. We'll see what happens on Sunday. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. We shall see. I don't know if I'm feeling good about this game and the Jags just get crushed, then not only will I not pick them to win another game this year, but it's going to take until I see them winning again. But I do feel good about them this week. Last one, Brian Armstrong said, got here late. Do we get a score prediction? Mia did not offer score prediction. Let me think of one real quick. How do I see this game playing out? Well, I do feel good about the Jags winning. And if the Jags win, then I think they'll have another big Tank Bigsby game and be able to kind of establish the run like they did against the Patriots last week. Certainly not going to have 17 runs in a row like they did last week. But the Jags' path to winning is probably forcing an early turnover, getting out to an early lead, and then having Tank be able to really finish out the game and just having the defense stay stout and continue beating up against Green Bay's pass rush in passing situations, or pass protection in passing situations. And so I'm going to say 24-20 Jaguars as a score prediction because I don't know what the over-under total is for this game. I would guess it's probably like 48.5 or something. Maybe it's a little bit lower. But yeah, I think we'll see a game get into the 20s, but not be super, super high scoring unless the Packers end up winning by a lot. But if the Jags win, I think they'll end up winning a close one that's in like the mid to low 20s behind, again, Tank Bigsby, big game. Josh Hines-Allen's trip sack or 2, just like random predictions I've got. Jayden Reed will probably have a big game. Darnell Savage pick 6. Screw it. Let's do it. Brian said the over-under is 49.5. So I'm going to say 24-20 Jaguars. The Jaguars obviously cover the spread and win outright, and the total will go under 49.5 points. So there you go. Don't even really need to tune in because I already know what's going to happen. But no, go ahead and tune in on Sunday as the Jaguars face the Packers at 1 o'clock at Everbank Stadium. I will be joined by Mia, Hacker, and Tommy after the game, immediately after the fact, to break down what we saw. And so don't forget, come back to Duval Rundown. Appreciate everyone for joining, hanging out. Yeah, that'll do it for today. Until next time.
The Duval Rundown has been brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Your path to recovery starts here.